1 year from today, a date that feels distant enough to ignore, yet close enough to change your entire life. Right now, as you listen to these words, somewhere in the future, a version of you already exists. Okay? A version that has lived through the next 12 months, a version that knows every decision you're about to make, okay? Every excuse, every delay, every sacrifice, every moment of discipline, every moment of weakness. Okay? That future version of you is watching silently, not judging, not speaking, just waiting to see which direction you choose. Because the truth is, 1 year is longer than most people think, dot, and shorter than most people realize. A year is enough time to completely transform your body, enough time to master valuable skills, enough time to build financial momentum, enough time to rebuild confidence, enough time to become mentally stronger than you have ever been. But it is also enough time to waste opportunities. Again, enough time to strengthen bad habits, enough time to stay exactly where you are. Again, enough time to collect another year of regret. And that is the terrifying part. Okay? The clock moves forward regardless of what you do. Time does not reward potential. Time rewards action. Every sunrise removes one more opportunity from your future and turns it into your past. Never to return, never to be recovered. And yet, most people live as if they have unlimited chances. They postpone important decisions. They delay uncomfortable actions. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for certainty. And they wait for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment has destroyed more dreams than failure ever could. Because perfection is often just fear wearing a smarter disguise. The fear of looking foolish, the fear of failing, okay? The fear of discovering what you're truly capable of. So people wait. And while they wait, weeks disappears. Okay? Months disappear, years disappear. Then one day they wake up shocked by a future they created through inaction. Not because they chose failure, but because they never fully chose growth. And that is why your future self matters. Okay? Because 1 year from now, there will be consequences for today's decisions, not punishments, consequences. Okay? If you choose discipline today, your future self receives the reward. If you choose excuses today, your future self carries the burden. Okay? If you choose growth today, your future self experiences the results. If you choose comfort today, your future self inherits the limitations. Every decision is a message sent forward through time, and your future self receives every single one. The problem is that most people never think this way. They treat today's actions as isolated moments, but nothing is isolated. Every choice compounds, every habit compounds, every delay compounds, every improvement compounds. Your life tomorrow is being built by what you repeatedly do today, whether you notice it or not, whether you like it or not. And right now, there are two futures quietly competing for your attention. One future is built through discipline, okay? Small actions repeated consistently, difficult decisions made repeatedly, growth chosen over comfort, responsibility chosen over excuses. The other future is built through delay, through waiting, through hesitation, through distraction, and through the false promise that there will always be more time. Both futures are available, both are possible, okay? But only one becomes real. And every day you cast another vote, not with your words, not with your intentions, with your actions, because actions never lie. Actions reveal what you truly believe. And if someone could watch every decision you make for the next 30 days, they could predict the person you'll become in the next 12 months. So, okay, that's how powerful daily choices really are. 1 year from today, you will remember this season of your life. You will remember the opportunities you accepted and the opportunities you ignored. You will remember whether you listened to your excuses or challenged them, You will remember whether you chose temporary comfort or long term growth. And when that future version of you looks back, at this moment, there will only be one question that matters. Will they thank you, or will they wish you had started sooner? Sooner? Okay. A lone figure standing at a crossroads at sunset, one road leading toward a bright horizon, and the other fading into darkness. Cinematic golden light, symbolizing two possible futures, and the weight of present decisions. The most dangerous thing about wasting a year is that it rarely feels like you are wasting it. You can. If failure arrived with warning signs, most people would avoid it. If regret announced itself in advance, most people would change direction. But it doesn't. It arrives quietly, disguised as ordinary days, a little more scrolling, a little more procrastination, a little more waiting, a little more comfort, nothing dramatic, and nothing alarming, just small choices repeated so often that they begin to feel normal. And that is exactly how years disappear, not through catastrophe, through convenience. Because convenience has a way of making stagnation feel harmless. You tell yourself, you'll start next week, then next month, then after things settle down, then after you're more confident, then after you're more prepared. And suddenly 12 months have passed. The dream is still waiting. The goal is still waiting. Okay. The potential is still waiting, but time is not. Time never waits. While you delay, it continues moving. Okay. While you hesitate, it continues moving. While you overthink, it continues moving. Every second becomes a memory the moment it passes. And there is no negotiation with that reality. Eh, That is why successful people are not necessarily smarter. They are not necessarily more talented. Okay? They simply understand something most people refuse to accept. Okay? The cost of waiting is often greater than the cost of failing. Because failure teaches, waiting only extends uncertainty. Okay? Failure gives feedback, waiting gives excuses. Failure can be corrected, waiting becomes a lifestyle, and lifestyles eventually become identities. That is why some people remain trapped for years, not because they lack ability, but because they have become emotionally attached to postponement. Postponement protects them from risk, it protects them from judgment. Okay. It protects them from temporary discomfort, but it also protects them from growth. And growth is never found inside protection. Growth lives where certainty ends. Think about every major improvement in your life, every lesson, every breakthrough, every achievement. Okay. None of them came from staying comfortable. They came from stepping into something uncertain, something difficult, okay, something that required courage before confidence. That is the pattern. Confidence is not the cause of action. Okay? Action is the cause of confidence. Yet, most people spend years waiting for confidence to arrive first. And while they wait, opportunities disappear. The future they wanted slowly drifts further away. Not because it became impossible, okay, but because they stopped moving toward it. Okay? That is why your future self depends on your present self more than you realize. Okay? Because the person you become next year is being shaped right now. In this moment, not tomorrow, not next Monday, okay? Not after things get easier. Now, every habit you reinforce today becomes part of your future identity. Thing. Every excuse you tolerate today becomes part of your future limitations. Every disciplined action you take today becomes part of your future strength. And that means something powerful. Okay? It means your future is not waiting to happen. It is already happening with every decision, with every hour, with every ordinary day. The problem is that ordinary days don't feel important, but extraordinary lives are built from ordinary days used wisely, not from rare moments of inspiration. not from occasional bursts of motivation, but from consistency, the quiet ability to keep showing up when nobody notices, the willingness to continue when progress feels invisible, the discipline to act when emotions are unreliable. Because emotions change, but the consequences of your actions remain. 1 year from now, nobody will care how motivated you felt. You know, nobody will care how many times you planned to start. Nobody will care how many intentions you had. Okay. What will matter is what you actually did, what you built, what you learned, what you became. And that realization is uncomfortable because it removes the fantasy that someday everything will magically improve. It places responsibility exactly where it belongs, in your hands, not because life is always fair, okay? Not because circumstances don't matter, but because your response to those circumstances matters even more. And when you fully understand that truth, something changes. You stop seeing time as something to spend. You start seeing it as something to invest. And investments always create returns. Okay? The only question is whether those returns will be growth or regret. Eh? A giant clock standing alone in an empty field at dawn, long shadows stretching across the ground, a solitary figure walking forward while pages of a calendar blow away. In the wind, cinematic atmosphere, symbolizing time slipping away and the urgency of action, there comes a moment in every person's life when excuses stop feeling comforting. Okay. A moment when the stories you've been telling yourself no longer sound convincing. Please take a moment when you look around and realize that the life you want and the life you're living are moving in opposite directions. And that realization hits differently because deep down, you already know the truth. You know which habits are helping you. You know which habits are hurting you. You know what needs to change. The problem has never been a lack of information. The problem has been the gap between knowing and doing. And that gap is where most dreams quietly disappear. Not because people don't care enough, but because action requires something knowledge never will: commitment, real commitment, the kind that continues when emotions leave, okay, the kind that survives disappointment, the kind that keeps moving when progress is invisible, because progress is often invisible for much longer than people expect. That is why so many quit too early. They plant seeds and then become frustrated when they don't immediately see a forest. Ken? They begin a journey and become discouraged when they can't yet see the destination. They start improving and become impatient when the mirror doesn't instantly reflect the change. But growth has always worked this way. First, it happens internally, then it becomes visible externally. The roots grow before the tree. The foundation forms before the building rises. The identity changes before the life changes. And this is where patience becomes a superpower, not passive patience, active patience. Can. The patience to continue working while waiting for results. Enka. The patience to trust the process when the outcome is not yet visible. Okay? The patience to keep showing up when nobody else understands what you're building. Because the future version of you is not created in moments of certainty. It is created in moments of doubt that you choose to move through anyway. Think about that. Again. The strongest version of yourself is not waiting on the other side of confidence. Okay? The strongest version of yourself is being built every time you act despite uncertainty, every time you continue despite fear. Again, every time you choose growth despite discomfort, every time you refuse to let temporary emotions control permanent decisions. That is where strength is born, not in comfort, not in convenience, but in resistance. And resistance has a purpose. It reveals who you are becoming because anyone can dream, anyone can make plans, anyone can imagine a better future. But not everyone can continue when reality becomes difficult. Not everyone can stay committed when motivation disappears. Not everyone can remain focused when distractions are everywhere. That is why transformation remains rare. Not because it is impossible, but because consistency is difficult, yet difficulty is exactly what gives it value. Ikele. If everyone could do it easily, it would not change lives. If everyone could remain disciplined effortlessly, discipline would not be powerful. Its power comes from scarcity. And every day you choose consistency, you join a smaller group of people, a group that understands something most never learn, that the future belongs to those who keep going, not the fastest, not the most talented, again, not even the most motivated, the ones who keep going, because persistence eventually defeats hesitation. Persistence eventually defeats fear. Burden eventually defeats doubt, not in a single day, not in a dramatic breakthrough, but through accumulation. One action, one decision, okay, one day at a time. And that accumulation is already happening in your life, whether you realize it or not. Okay? The only question is what you're accumulating: excuses or discipline, delay or momentum, comfort or growth. Okay? Because 1 year from today, the answer will be obvious. Your life will reveal it, your habits will reveal it, okay? Your results will reveal it. And when that future version of you looks back on this season, dot, they won't remember how difficult it felt. They will remember whether you kept going. Like a lone traveler climbing a steep mountain path through thick fog, only a few steps visible ahead, distant sunlight breaking through the clouds above, cinematic symbolism of faith, persistence, and unseen progress. Most people believe their future is created by big moments, a breakthrough, a lucky opportunity, a life changing event, something dramatic that suddenly changes everything. Okay. But when you study the lives of people who transform themselves, you discover a different truth. Their lives changed long before anyone noticed. The breakthrough was visible, the preparation was invisible, the victory was public, the struggle was private, the success looked sudden, the effort was years in the making. Uh, And that is the illusion that traps so many people. They compare someone else's visible results to their own invisible beginning. They see the outcome, think, but they never see the thousands of ordinary decisions that created it. The early mornings, the repeated failures, the lonely work, the discipline nobody applauded, the sacrifices nobody understood. Okay? Because greatness is rarely built in front of an audience, it is built in solitude. Again, in the moments where nobody would know if you quit, the moments where nobody would know if you gave up, okay? The moments where the only person you can disappoint is yourself. And those moments matter more than anyone realizes, because character is not revealed when life is easy. Character is revealed when nobody is watching, when convenience is available, when excuses would be accepted, when quitting would be understandable, and you continue anyway. That is where identity is forged. Okay? Not in comfort, not in applause, in commitment. And commitment is what separates people who wish from people who become. Okay? Because wishing creates temporary emotion, commitment creates permanent change. Again, 1 year from today, the difference between your current self and your future self will not be intelligence. Okay? It will not be luck, it will not be talent, it will be accumulated decisions. The choices you repeated, the standards you accepted, the habits you strengthened, the excuses you tolerated or refused to tolerate. That is how transformation works: quietly, patiently, relentlessly, like water shaping stone, not through force, through consistency. And eventually, consistency reaches a point where results become impossible to hide. People begin to notice. They ask what changed. Okay, and they ask how you became more confident, more focused, more disciplined, more capable. They think the transformation happened recently. Okay. But you know better. You know it started long before anyone saw it. You know it began on days when nothing seemed to be happening, on days when progress felt invisible, and on days when it would have been easier to stop, because those were the days that mattered most. Okay? Not because they felt important, but because they built the person capable of handling success when it arrived. And that is something many people never understand. Success does not create identity. Identity creates success. The results come later. Okay, now, the person comes first, which means your primary responsibility is not chasing outcomes. It is becoming the type of person capable of producing them. And once that identity forms, the future changes automatically. Okay? Because your actions change, your standards change, your expectations change, your behavior changes. And behavior, repeated over time, changes everything. Okay? That is why the next 12 months are so important. Not because a year is magical, okay, but because a year is long enough to completely reinvent yourself. If you stop waiting for permission, long enough to build habits that once felt impossible, long enough to develop confidence through action, long enough to become unrecognizable compared to who you are today. Okay? But it is also long enough to remain exactly where you are. That choice belongs to nobody else, not society, okay, not your circumstances, not your past. You, every day, every decision, every hour, and somewhere in the future, a version of you is waiting to see what you choose, waiting to see whether you continue, waiting to see whether you settle, Kang, waiting to see whether you finally become the person you have imagined for so long. Kana? Because 1 year from today, you will meet that version. The question is simple. Will they look back with gratitude or regret? Figure, a confident figure standing on a mountain summit at sunrise, overlooking a vast landscape illuminated by golden light, symbolizing the future self finally reached after a year of discipline, growth, and transformation. The future is not. And now, we arrive at the truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. In something you enter, it is something you create every single day, with every choice, with every action, with every standard you accept for yourself. For years, people search for a secret, a shortcut, a breakthrough formula, something that will magically transform their lives without requiring them to transform themselves. But there is no shortcut around becoming. In. There is no way to build a powerful future while maintaining weak habits. Okay? There is no way to create extraordinary results while protecting ordinary excuses. At some point, reality demands alignment. Reckon? And alignment is simple, not easy, but simple. The person you become determines the life you experience. Nothing more, nothing less. That is why the next year matters so much. Not because 12 months is a long time, okay, but because 12 months repeated with intention can completely alter the trajectory of your life. Think about where you are right now. Think about the goals you still haven't achieved. Okay. The promises you made to yourself, the plans you postponed, the dreams you keep carrying from 1 year into the next. Now imagine meeting yourself exactly 1 year from today, looking directly into the eyes of the person your choices created. What would they say? Would they thank you for finally taking action? Would they thank you for refusing to quit? Ken? Would they thank you for staying disciplined when it was inconvenient? Ken? Would they thank you for continuing when nobody believed in you? Or would they ask why you waited? Why you doubted yourself again? Why you traded another year for temporary comfort? Ken? Why you kept telling yourself there would be more time? Okay? Because the truth is, your future self is not asking for perfection. They are asking for effort. Again, they are not asking you to change your entire life overnight. They are asking you to stop abandoning the small decisions that shape your life. One choice, one habit, one action, okay? One day at a time. That is how every transformation begins. Not with a dramatic moment, but with a decision, a quiet decision that says, no more waiting, no more excuses, no more negotiating with the life. I know I am capable of creating. And once that decision is made, something remarkable happens. The future stops feeling distant because you begin building it immediately. Can I? Every disciplined action becomes a brick. Every repeated habit becomes a foundation. Every uncomfortable step becomes evidence that you are becoming someone stronger. And eventually, the person you once dreamed about stops being a dream. They become your reality. Okay? Not because you were lucky, not because circumstances were perfect, but because you chose consistency over convenience, growth over comfort, action over excuses, again and again, until the gap between who you were and who you became disappeared completely. 1 year from today is coming, whether you prepare for it or not. The calendar will move. You can. The seasons will change. The months will pass. That part is guaranteed. Okay? The only thing that is not guaranteed is who you will be when you arrive. Okay? That decision is being made right now in this moment and tomorrow and the day after that. Okay? Because every day is a vote, every action is a vote, every habit is a vote. Okay? For the person you are becoming, so choose carefully because 1 year from today, you will finally meet the person your decisions created. Okay? Make sure they are someone who looks back and says, "You, thank you for not giving up." Okay? A powerful sunrise over a vast horizon, a lone figure walking confidently toward the light, long shadows behind them, fading into the distance, cinematic golden atmosphere, symbolizing gratitude, fulfillment, and the future self, finally thanking the present self for choosing growth,